There are only two more sections remaining in the muscle chapter. And this first one talks about the difference between slow and fast fibers, and then we will move on to disorders. So there are three major types of skeletal muscle fibers: slow, fast, and intermediate. Fast fibers are different in appearance. They're larger in diameter. They have very few mitochondria, but lots of glycogen. Very densely packed. Oh, there's my cat getting in my face. She likes to smell my breath. Oopsie. Come on, Orangey. Sit down. Okay. And these fast fibers make very powerful contractions. These fatigue rapidly. Slow fibers are much slower to contract than fast fibers, and these will look, they're smaller in diameter. They're mostly aerobic, so they need a lot of oxygen. And because they need a lot of oxygen, they'll actually be different in color. So the color differences are due to the presence of a pigment similar to hemoglobin. You know that hemoglobin carries oxygen in the red blood cells. Well, myoglobin stores oxygen in the muscle cells. And so this myoglobin will make the muscle appear dark red. So, you know, when you eat turkey, you've got dark meat and light meat. Well, which meat is dark meat? That would be the legs. And which meat is white meat? That would be the breast. Well, the legs are going to have darker meat because it has the myoglobin, more oxygen, a dark red pigment, because those legs are really working to run that little turkey across the field. You can definitely see a difference visually between the fast and slow fibers. So here's an electron micrograph of the same, and you can see different colors. The fast fiber is W for white, and the slow fiber is R for red. And so the slow fiber has a lot of mitochondria and a very good blood supply. Intermediate fibers are a little bit more like fast fibers because they have less myoglobin, paler in color, and they are more fatigue resistant. Most muscles definitely have a mixture of the fiber types, and that mixture reflects the function. The back calf is dominated by slow fibers, and the eye and hand may only have fast, and these percentages of fast and slow are genetically determined. They can be modified somewhat, the percentage of intermediate to fast, through athletic training. And our last section is different factors that can result in muscle hypertrophy, atrophy, or paralysis. So hyper is over or above, and here is hypertrophic muscle enlargement, and it's due to repeated exhaustive stimulation. So the muscle gets larger because the actual fiber or cell gets larger. It increases in mitochondria. There's more storage of glycogen, more myofibrils, and steroid hormones are one thing that can cause this to happen. Now, atrophy is a decrease in muscle size, and if you check this hand compared to your hand, you'll notice the lack of muscle between the first and second metacarpal. And this is from decreased stimulation, normal with aging. So as we age, we have to fight this natural atrophy by muscle training and exercise. It may be due to paralysis or nerve damage, and it may be due to having your hand in a cast. A variety of things can cause atrophy. So this atrophy is reversible. However, if it goes on for a long period of time, that muscle fiber can die. It won't be replaced. Muscular dystrophy is an inherited condition, usually in males because it is carried on the X chromosome. And this is the result is muscular, slow muscular deterioration, and finally paralysis. And the paralysis would come from paralysis of the diaphragm. Polio is a viral disease, and this attacks motor neurons, causing atrophy and paralysis. Tetanus, you've probably heard of tetanus. Most of us have had our tetanus vaccine. It's a toxin from the bacteria Clostridium tetani, found everywhere, actually, in fields and soil. And usually we think, well, you've got to have your tetanus shot if you've stepped on a rusty nail. Well, the point is that that rusty nail pokes the bacteria deep into the foot, and where that tissue may be dead around that cut, it's a low oxygen condition that can cause the bacteria to survive and grow. They love low oxygen conditions. It's got a very high death rate, 40 to 60% mortality. We don't die from it in this country because most of us are immunized. So in the past, without immunizations, tetanus would cause total body contractions. And in this case, arching backward because the back muscles are stronger than the abdominal muscles. Around the world, we see some in neonatal cases, often where infants are born in a home birth, and a non-sterile instrument is used to cut the umbilical cord. And this child is as stiff as a board. They are holding it up by just their ankles and their head. Botulism is from another clostridial species, Clostridium botulinum. Also anaerobic, loves low oxygen conditions, and this is something that used to be quite common in some of our canned goods because people canned a lot more at home and they didn't do it properly. So you've got to can properly to prevent botulism. And this will cause paralysis of skeletal muscles because it blocks acetylcholine release. So without acetylcholine crossing that synaptic cleft and binding to the receptor, you will not have muscle contraction. Myasthenia gravis is an autoimmune disease that causes the decline of the acetylcholine receptor. So no matter how much acetylcholine you have, if it does not bind to the receptor because there's no receptor, there will be no muscle contraction. So this is progressive muscle weakness. Rigor mortis is muscle contractions shortly after death, and it begins with the small muscles of the face, neck, and arms. These contractions are due to the presence of ATP in the muscle cell, and there is the release of calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum, and a contraction occurs. ATP is required to cause the contraction, but ATP is also required to detach the cross bridge. So without ATP detaching the cross bridge, because after death you're not making ATP, rigor mortis sets in. It ends 1 to 6 days later as the muscle tissue decomposes, and that time frame is a product of the temperature at which the body is. So what do you think? What's the answer? How is an action potential created? C, the flow of sodium across the sarcolemma. What are the main contributors of negative charges within a muscle cell? Again, C, proteins. Which of the following stays the same length when filaments slide? That would be D, the A band. In what type of muscle contraction does the tension rise and the skeletal muscle length shortens moving a load? That would be isotonic concentric contractions. Which of these occurs when a second stimulus arrives before the muscle completely relaxes? A second, more powerful contraction. What term refers to a chronic, continual, low-level contraction that keeps the muscles firm without producing movement? Tone. What is the source of 95% of the energy demand for resting muscle? Aerobic metabolism. And what is the main source of stored energy molecules in a muscle cell? And that would be glycogen. What advantage does ATP production via glycolysis give a muscle? ATP production is faster. When will muscle fibers typically rely on glycogen reserves and aerobic respiration to meet energy needs? During moderate activity. What type of muscle fiber has the highest concentration of myoglobin? So that would be fibers that are more red because they need more oxygen, and that would be the slow fibers.